broadcast is now
Good
starting. All
afternoon.
attendees
This is
are in a
Melissa
listen-only
Wires. I'm the
mode.
Executive Director of Every Action. Thank you for joining me this afternoon. Today we're going to talk a bit about reporting and look a little bit at the metrics that matter. My background is really fundraising. I have been knee-deep in fundraising reporting for over 30 years now. So I've seen it evolve a bit, and I think probably the biggest change is the huge proliferation of data, tracking that data, and trying to be a lot more strategic about your fundraising program. So we're going to talk today a little bit of, particularly thinking of people who maybe are in small shop organizations, or even if you're in a very large organization. I don't know anybody who has enough time to do all the reporting they'd like to do. So we want to kind of focus on what matters most today. Throughout this, if you have questions, just type them into the box and we'll cover them as we can. Don't be shy. And kind of just getting started, as you really think about reporting and really think about kind of your strategic thinking for 2019, I think the biggest thing is don't get lost in the numbers. It is so much better for you to create 4 or 5 or 6 reports that just tell you everything that is most important to you than to have 20 or 30 or 40 reports available to you, because it's just too much data to really be useful. So think about what really matters. And I think one of the ways to think about that with reporting is it's the difference between what's interesting to know versus what's actionable. So what you really want to focus on with good reporting is things that give you information where you know you can move the needle. You can test something, you can change something that you're doing in your program. In some cases, it stop doing certain things that you're not getting great results for. But I think that's always every time you put a report in front of you, really think, what is the actionable outcome of this information? The other thing, I think this goes without saying, but I feel like I always need to say this: reporting should lighten your load. Reporting should not add 2 more hours to your day of work that you have to do. Reporting should serve you and serve your strategic goals. So if you feel like your reporting's not doing that, you're either looking at the wrong metrics or you're just drowning in data. So a couple things. I think there's kind of 4 areas where reporting really is helpful. And I think probably the first one is what everybody's most familiar with. The biggest reason to have a report is to see how you're doing against your budgeted numbers. Are you bringing in the money that you said you would bring in? I think second to that, and probably then the most common that folks are doing, is looking at each individual effort and what the outcome of that. So this is your results for each email, each direct mail piece, each telemarketing campaign, each time you canvass. It's kind of a one-off. And then I think kind of second to that then is to begin to look at those individual efforts and a campaign structure. And we'll talk a little bit about what the advantage of doing that is today. The third one is what I call donor success. And honestly, for fundraisers, donor success is donors who continue giving you money, hopefully more money each year for every year of their life. And when their life does end, they leave you a planned gift. That's what fundraisers think of as donor success. And then the fourth one, and maybe the most valuable at all, is the reports that really can guide your overall strategy. And I think this is where folks don't spend enough time. So we'll get there today and talk about that a little bit. All right, so this is probably what folks are most familiar with. And I think the most common report everybody uses is where am I to my fiscal year goal? And especially for those of you that have a calendar fiscal year, you just went through this in December, which if you're like me, for certainly the last 10 days of the month, you refresh that report about 50 times a day to see if you're going to make that goal or not. But I think the other report to think about here that is really, really useful is at any point in your fiscal year, on this day this year, how's my money compared to this day last year? And in Every Action, we think this report is so important. This is our dashboard. When you log in, this is the first number that you would see. And it does exactly what it says. The green is this fiscal year and the blue is last fiscal year. And you can click click in on any of those dots and it'll give you an exact amount. It summarizes at this point in the year, Abigail is just a little over 50% to her goal. So I think this is a report. If you don't have it, see if you can create it. And hopefully you're in a system that just produces it for you, because I think this is really a nice way to look at where you are. So then kind of talking about individual efforts. So that probably the most common one that everybody looks at is just a single effort and a single channel. And that's the one you're really familiar with. The next one is then when you can put those different efforts into a campaign. So maybe you have 3 related emails that you want to count together, and you can put that all together in one report. So first we have just a basic email performance report. I imagine you guys kind of see this all the time. Usually what you're really looking at is open rate and click rate, and then you're probably running over and looking at your bounce rate and your unsubscribe rate. I will say all the examples in this presentation today are from a demo database, so this is not reflective of what yours would look like at all, but just to give you a good idea. The one thing in this report that you really want is, again, make sure you have a system that will spit out totally easy a report that'll show you your contributions with your opens and clicks. Ideally, you don't want to spend your life in Excel combining things together. So look at your system, even if you're maybe ask whoever your provider is to do something custom, make sure you have your money and your open and clicks in one place. All right, so then looking a little bit more different, single effort, multi-efforts under a campaign, and then where I think it gets really interesting is being able to look at a multi-channel campaign. So just as an example here, probably if any time you do a multi-channel campaign, you do it at year end. And so our hypothetical one here is we're going to have 3 emails, 2 direct mail pieces, and a phone call to our best donors. And what you want to make sure is you set up your structure so you can pull each of those efforts into what we at Every Action call a campaign. So you simply, in our system, put your campaign name in, and then each one of the related efforts to that, regardless of channel, will pull into a single report. So what you see below there with the campaign, you get some summary stats at the top, but then, these are all our different topics in our big annual campaign. And that's the other way you can look at this. Is, overall total year campaigns. So I think a good example of this is probably many of you are running renewals every single month, and you're probably doing 3 or 4 or 5 notices per each renewal campaign. But being able to roll that up into a report that can show you your overall renewal performance for the whole year can be really useful, because when you just do it, group by group by group throughout the year, inevitably everybody has their best donors kind of all together in one season. And so if you aren't rolling that all up and looking at all 12 months of your renewals, sometimes you're really missing some insights into what that looks like when you kind of mix it up over a longer period of time. The other reason I think, the other thing I think multi-channel reporting, and if you don't have this, you want to really think about a system that provides this, or perhaps somebody who can customize this for you. Once you can look at things across channels, what it really helps you do is figure out your sequencing. I think we all know that we raise more money when we do a multi-channel campaign, but I find most clients aren't really sure, do you start with an email, or actually should the direct mail piece lead? What's the sequencing there that's going to raise you most net money? I think second, and related very close to that, is getting the real cost of your campaign. And it's not just, what does your postage and printing cost on your direct mail piece, but the time and effort you and your team spend on doing the creative, doing the production of email, and all of that. And I think when you can look at all of those in one place, that becomes, you can make that more apparent for you. And that really is kind of that third thing in multi-channel. I call it bang for your time. It's not that bang for your buck doesn't matter as well, but with bang for your time, it's really, we know it's more effort to put these multi-channel campaigns together. We know that we make more money doing it, but I don't think a lot of people have kind of found that sweet spot yet, where here's just the right amount of what we need to do to maximize our income. And by being able to look at everything in one place in one report, it'll start giving you more insight into that. We talked a little bit about this. This is, these longer term campaigns. The example was a full year of renewals, but also, particularly retention is such an important issue with everybody at this moment. And so what can be really insightful if you haven't done this is look at your last 3 years of renewals. Take, FY16, FY17, FY18, and look at that all together in one report. And again, sometimes you will see trends that don't reveal themselves when you're looking renewal by renewal. And then I think next place we go is just kind of your standard contribution report. The big thing here is you're going to want to be able to kind of slice and dice this by whatever you want to be able to see what's making a difference. So one of the things we do is we make it possible that every field in the system you can pull into your email report. And then you can group this up. So I just want to see this by source code. This is showing you literally every single gift, which most time you don't want to really quite look at it this way, but it's really nice when you get that outlier gift. Where did that $5,000 come from? You can click down to it. So those are kind of your basic campaign and effort reports. And I think for most folks, that's pretty standard. I think it's kind of what I think of as level 3 and level 4, where you really want to think about a little bit different reporting. And what this first group, which I call level 3, are really reports for donor success. And I think what you want to come out of with these report is, where are you investing your time and your resources? I think we all, do a lot of things because we've been doing them for a long, long time, and that's how our predecessor did it, or this is how our budget goes together, and we always do renewals, and we always do upsell invites at this time. And I think you kind of get in this habit, and a really good report should be able to kind of pull you back from that and say, wow, here, this program takes this amount of time and this amount of resources, and when I think of that versus the money we get, is that worth my time? One of the places that I think this has become apparent to a lot of organizations is, and I think a lot of people have started these in recent years and had good success, is mid-level dollar programs. These are oftentimes your folks that are kind of in that 500 to maybe 2,000, 2,500. They aren't quite major donors, but they're very valuable. And I think everyone who has started testing this just figures for time and the resources it takes to create a special program for that, it is well worth it with the income that you get. The place where maybe you want a report that's showing you, is it worth your time? Maybe deep lapse donors who were $25 or less, maybe that isn't the best place for you to put your time. Maybe it is, but you want a report that will really show you that. And I think the way to think about this is, do you have what I call MVD reports, most valuable donor reports? Do you have an easy way to get to who those people are? And here's some that I kind of recommend. I think, first of all, and this will differ a little bit by your particular program, what your key metrics are going to be. But I think for a lot of folks, kind of where to start is actually, believe it or not, with that lapsed donor number. I think what we're all going to be struggling with is really dramatically upping our retention. Acquisition has been increasing in cost for a number of years now, and we really are kind of hitting that demographic point where we're starting to see kind of the oldest baby boomers moving out of their donor years, if you will, and kind of the oldest Generation X coming into their prime donor years. And Generation X donors are great donors. The only problem with them is there's a lot less of them than there are the baby boomers. So keeping donors has been important for the last decade, but it's going to dramatically increase. And so I really think you should have, and again, this is our dashboard. And one of the numbers that we put up top and center is your lapsed donors. And every day it just updates, who lapsed yesterday and what's your total for the year. And I think it's not necessarily the number you want to see first thing every morning, but I think in terms of really making your retention program successful, that's something you want to see up top. Kind of the other side of that coin, if you will, and maybe maybe you want to flip the order of these in your world, but is first-time donors. Where are you adding those donors to so that you're either at replacement value or a little bit better? You can see again in our dashboard, we are not doing that great. We have lost 218 donors and we've only got 72 donors to replace them. So we need to up our acquisition game and add a bunch more donors to just keep even. The other thing that I think most people really look at, and this is what really changes from program to program, is what are your key areas that you're investing? Lots and lots of folks have really focused on increasing their monthly givers. Pound per pound, your sustainers probably are your most valuable donors. And so again, if you've really invested time and money in growing that program, have that metric right at your fingertip every single day so you can just at a glance know where you are. Other things to keep on the retention theme, I think this is where a lot of folks just need easier and better tools. And one of the ones that I really like, which is a report that's been around for a long time, but is the year-over-year contribution report. So you can see here, it takes your total donations by year. And it shows you, are you up from last year? Are you down from last year? Again, you can tell this is a sad report here because they are not keeping up. You would be doing much, much, much better. But it starts and gives you kind of the total year over year money and people. And then it kind of breaks it down into different groups. New donors, again, that's are you replacing the people that you're losing at a high enough rate? And then breaks it again down into active donors. And then the third category over there on the edge is reactivated donors. And again, that's kind of key metrics that we feel like anybody should have. You can build this report in Excel or any place else. But what's really nice is if it's just available at a touch of the button in your system, or if you're working with an analytics firm, that they just set this up for you and it updates regularly. I do think the other reason why this is important, because it gives you a real quick snapshot of your overall retention, but it also shows you trends. Even in this report here, you can see 2016 was an amazing year. And then we've just fallen apart. 2019 has just begun, so we won't count that. But 2018 was not a good year. And anybody can, in 2 seconds, kind of glean that out of. And I think as a fundraiser, having that at your fingertips is super helpful. The next report that I really like, and again, this is one that's been around for a number of years, but is the donor range report. And this basically combines three things, which you can see two of well in this here. But basically the three things is highest previous contribution. You also could think about doing this with most recent contribution. It's a different version of it. And then against recency of that contribution. So 0 to 3 months, 4 to 6, 7 to 12, and on down there. And then what it further breaks out is people who are multi-givers, which is this top half that you see. And then right below you have single givers. And again, this kind of gives you one step more than the year over year, because it also shows you, are your donors increasing in value or decreasing in value? So at a snapshot here, what I can see is what was really reflected in that other report, which is, 3 years ago, I was doing amazing, but we've really stepped off the gas. So I need to flip this so that my higher numbers are at the top and preferably to the right, because you can see over there on the edge, HPC of 5,000 plus, which we all need more of those kind of donors to kind of do that. But again, you can build this report in Excel. Like I said, this has been analysis that's been around for a long time. But again, if you have this in the system that you're using in the CRM that you're working with, or again, if you're working with an analytics firm, ask them to provide this report for you, because it really gives you a lot of quick insight. All right, so now we're going to the fourth level. And these are the reports that are super valuable. These are the reports, if you don't have them, build them. If you don't have the time to build them, pay somebody to build them for you, because this is really reports that are going to help you guide your strategy, not only in terms of your next couple of appeals or renewals or whatever, but really kind of what can you do for the next 3 years. And really the core of all these reports is you're really trying to get to your return on investment. What are we really spending and what are we really getting? And the thing that is always interesting about fundraising is in a lot of programs, you're not really recognizing the total value of your donors in the first year or maybe even the second year. It's not till you get out 3, 4, 5 years that you really see what's valuable. So, a lot of folks struggle with this in acquisition in a couple of different ways. Sometimes if you're doing direct mail, the list, or if you're doing acquisition online, the ad that you ran that gave you the most people doesn't always turn out to be your best acquisition source over many years, because maybe you got a lot of people, but they don't retain very well. Or you got people, but it was a low dollar gift and you can't upgrade them. So when you're looking at ROI, you want to be able to look over a longer period of time. The other place that it's really confusing is when you're trying to compare across channels. So basically, I think one of the great examples is maybe you're running a big canvassing program, particularly to acquire monthly givers. And at the same time, you're running a big social campaign to also acquire donors, monthly givers or otherwise. And, kind of the difference is, maybe you're spending upward of $200 to acquire that monthly giver. And over 5 years, that's going to be a great investment, but it's going to take you probably 2 years to break even on that investment. Whereas, you're running your Facebook ads and they're just clicking along and you're paying $2 an ad and you think you are really doing amazing, but you get to 5 years and you find those people you acquired on Facebook don't have nearly that value that the canvassing campaign has. But you need a good report that will really show you that. So put together some sort of acquisition ROI report. Get something that will let you look across years and will give you all that basic data. So both number of contacts and your total dollars. So you can really start getting a good picture of where you are. And really, that builds to what I think, if you can only do one thing, if you can only have one thing, the one thing you want is a long-term value report. A lot of people call this 5-year value of a donor report. And so essentially what this is, it's collecting a lot of data and putting it into one output for you. So essentially what you're going to do is that first gift amount. So great, you gave $75 today. You're going to put in that acquisition cost or acquisition costs. And the reason I say that is, they came in on a direct mail piece. So it's pretty easy for you to say, well, our cost to acquire is $35 and that goes in. But again, maybe they come in from social, from Facebook ads, or maybe you're doing display ads. And, maybe you've run that paid Facebook ad 10 times before they actually make that first gift. And so what you want is something that'll really let you collect the cost of all 10 of those ads, not just the one that they came in on. Then the next part that it really covers is your subsequent gifts from that donor by year. So you want to retain these people, so you want at least one gift in every fiscal year. Hopefully you're going to get more gifts than that, but you add all those up. And then hand in hand with that is whatever solicitation costs you had to get those subsequent gifts. And you do that year over year over year. And your result, which is what's hugely valuable, is you actually get the net value of a donor, of each of your donors, and you do it from a range of 1 to 5 years. So that report looks something like this. And it's simple. It's amazing how much effort goes into building these reports because there's potentially a ton of data in here. But what it just shows you is for each of your fiscal year, number of folks, what their lifetime revenue was, what their lifetime cost was, and what their lifetime value was. And it gives you gross, and then it'll give you the net. And so this is where you really start to really see what you need out of your reporting and really where you're getting your value. And so this is the overall, and then you can take different cuts of this and do it by program. You can see everybody in your renewals program, or you can do it by channel. I want to see everybody that's given in direct mail, or I want to see everybody who's given online. This cut here is every gift, every channel, every donor, and some totals. But this really is how you answer these questions, when you're trying to compare apples and oranges. Should we put more money into canvassing to get sustainers, or should I, up my Facebook ads by 10%? Because at year 3, at year 5, what am I making off of those donors? And that's really where the true value of your program is coming together. All right. So went through that a little bit quick, but I think, hopefully what you'll really see is how you can really not drown in 300 reports and not keep creating new reports because somehow you think you're going to get a better outcome if you don't like your numbers. Instead, really think about the reports that are really going to serve you. And I think that's really how you can make more money in 2019. And I think with that, questions. Folks have any questions? Please type them in, and we'll take just a minute to receive them and respond. Oh, okay. Somebody has a question. Could you define renewal? And renewal is a couple of things. For most people, it's a special program, a special series of solicitations that particularly are asking people to renew their gift. For groups that run actual membership programs, it is the total, it's been a year now, and please give us $50 so you can continue to be a member of this great organization. For a lot of groups that are not strictly membership groups, what they really will talk about is renew your commitment. Most people do programs that are what are called renewal at birth. So if I made my first gift in March of 2018, then I'm going to get asked to renew that gift. Actually, not in March, probably in January, because you usually do it 90 days before it would expire. But basically, you're going to do it in the same time frame. Other folks have great success with this. They do an annual renewal. I'm sure a lot of you probably just did this in January because that's a really popular time to do renewals. And they just take everybody and kick the year off and say, please renew. One thing that's a little bit different is you don't want to confuse renewals with retention rates, although one feeds into the other. But retention typically means anybody who has given a gift in the last fiscal year and then made a second gift in this fiscal year or otherwise. It means that they've continued to give to you. So next question. Someone asks, are there applications programs that compile this information? And yes, there absolutely are. And there's a few different ways to get to them. The first and foremost, your CRM should provide reports for you. Different CRMs take different approaches to this. Some are totally what I always think of as canned reports. So they've built them for you. You push a button and you get a report. The only problem with those is you can't customize those reports to what you're looking at. It's sort of what you see is what you get, but they usually come right with your system. And then others give you a report builder. So you've got to put it together and figure out what you want to see, but you can do that. I love the way we do it in Every Action because I'm totally biased, but we kind of split the difference and we do what we call templated reports. So we take a report like the contributions report. We get that 75% of the way to anything that we think you would want to see. And then we let you go back and customize that in terms of what fields do you want to see, what group of people do you want to look at particularly, do you want to look at a particular segment, you want to look at a particular average gift range, and then we also let you put the columns in whatever order you like to see it. If you like to see response rate first, make that first. So that should be part of your CRM system in and of itself. If you don't have everything you want in your CRM system, or otherwise are not totally happy with it, there are other programs out there that you can buy that are just for reporting and analytics. There's also a lot of folks that work with outside vendors, firms that just specialize in analytics. And any of the reports that I showed you today, these are pretty classic reports for analytics, and they can probably provide those for you. It is possible to build all these reports in Excel, but I'm just going to say you really don't want to build a long-term value report in Excel. It's hard, it takes time, and it takes a lot of effort to refresh. But yeah, these are available either through your CRM, through other software in the market, or through vendors who offer analytics services to nonprofits. All right, we have just a few more minutes. Any other questions? Does anybody have a favorite report that I didn't talk about that you'd like to recommend to the group? No favorite reports. Everybody needs reports, I think. All right. Well, I think if that's our questions for today, thank you all for joining us. Good luck with your reporting. Don't drown in your numbers. Find the ones that really matter to you. Thank you.